All right, Mike, we are live. You could do the intro thing because
It's Tuesday, and that means it's time for comic book school, where we teach you the craft and business of everything comic books and stuff.
I think I napped a little too long, Mike. You know, a lot of people don't know this, but I go to work, I come home from work. What do I do when I get home?
Take a nap.
I nap hard. I nap. I say this to Mike. I nap like somebody put a chloroform rag over my mouth. Like
Right,
I
so
nap
you get home
hard.
at like what, 5, and then you nap till 8?
Till 8. No, I wake up and then I put the slides together. So I prep for the show, but then the last minute I put the slides together. So there's always more slides that I wish I had time to do.
That's like 2 hours of napping, which is not a nap. That's a sleep.
That is a sleep. So tonight, Mike, we are going to go into a dream world. That's our transition when we talk about surreal comics. By the way, can I just say that I'm really happy with the way this graphic came out.
It looks pretty nice.
It came out pretty nice.
Pretty nice. Look at that.
Naps.
I think you should do that. Put a little camera in your room and just live stream the naps.
Yeah, I'm sure that would get the whole audience
going. There are people that would watch that.
There are people who would watch that. But tonight, Mike, we are here to talk about the craft and business of making comics. And I think it's really important for new people to know that you are a 3-time Emmy Award-winning television writer, comic book writer, and we need to change these graphics. I think it's time for us to update our graphics soon.
We need a big update, and you need to tone down on those graphics.
Yeah. There you go. And then I'm also a comic book writer, award-winning. We know each other from the Wizard days. Thank you. I got to update all these graphics.
Yes, you do. You got a lot of work to do.
Maybe if I set the alarm clock a little bit less.
Or if you just didn't nap. You got 2 hours that you can
work on this. If I didn't nap, the show would be completely me just dozing off. So, Mike, today we're going to hear about surreal comic books, but I asked you to perhaps get into the concept of what is surrealism, Mike.
Yes. Well, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, surrealism is a 20th century avant-garde movement in art and literature that sought to release the creative potential of the unconscious mind. Now, but basically it's just about creating anything that's kind of like in a dreamlike state. You know, up is down, down is up. You have weird stuff that doesn't make any sense. So it's in that kind of world, surrealism is normal, which is odd to say. But yeah, it's basically anything that you want that's wacky and weird and doesn't really make any sense. And it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. And then there is definitely a fine line between surrealism and absurdism in different branches of storytelling. What we're going to be looking at tonight, Mike, is certain comic books that were inspired by surrealism. And I thought, well, let's go back to who is probably the best known surrealist of our age, is Salvador Dali. Now, Salvador Dali was a famous painter from Spain. And this to the right here is his most famous work of art, although many of his works of art are extremely famous. This one is The Persistence of Memory, and it shows melting clocks in a desert, and it has many layers of meaning and understanding. And of course, you and I both went to liberal arts college. I'm not sure if you studied painting or visual storytelling in any way, but we spent a lot of time on Dali. And I always found his work to be extremely compelling, and you just could not stop looking at it. Did you study painting or surrealism at all when you went to college?
I did not study any of that because I'm not a big art. Like, I'm going to find out all there is to know about the art. Like, if I looked at this picture, I'd be like, that's pretty cool. And that's about all I need to know. Don't need to know who did it or what's it about. Just it's a cool picture.
It's a cool picture. Okay, well, that's fair. Dali did do. Hi, Victor. Hey, Victor, nice to see you again. How are you? I think every time I see Victor, I go, we got to get in touch with Victor and show some of his art. His art is really good, but we will do that, Victor. Victor, get in touch with me on the Gmail. What does Glenn say there?
On Dali, on drugs, you can tell the difference.
Ah, so Mike, you're not doing enough drugs.
Yeah, apparently. I guess I should get into that.
Yeah. So Dali literally pushed things as far as they could go, getting into film, getting into screenplays, getting into all kinds of storytelling throughout the, I guess, late 50s, early 60s, and was truly iconic. And his work influenced generations of artists. And I'm imagining that some of the artists that we're about to show tonight were also influenced by Dali.
I bet they were, because they went to a liberal arts school like you did and studied art.
They certainly did. I did. You went to a liberal arts school.
I went to a
Ismael. Nice to see you again, Ismael. Good to see you. You went to a liberal arts school. What did you major in?
I was a literature major.
Okay, so you went to a liberal arts school.
Yeah.
All right. Did you? All right. Well, we'll get it. We'll get down to your literature section, but a little bit more about Dali. The painting on the right is called Elephant, perhaps for obvious reason. The painting on the left is called Dream Caused by the Flight of a Bee Around a Pomegranate a Second Before Awakening.
Wow. See, now that's a title for a picture.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you really get into this one, this is a magnificent piece of art. I got to see some of the original arts at a museum when I was traveling in Europe. There was a Salvador Dali museum, and I was able to go visit and see some of these paintings in person.
They're great paintings. It's not like the kind where it's just all kind of blobs and stuff. These are actual pictures. They're just weird and put together in a strange way.
Yeah. And, you could go on forever with abstractionists and dive into cubism. And you were talking about Picasso and cubism. You can get into all manner of different types of artworks to determine, what you like. But surrealism has a certain amount of realism anchored in it in order to make it as interesting and twisty and challenging as possible.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Glenn says Dali actually made a painting of his paramour's backside, and when you look at it from about 100 feet, it looks like a portrait of Abraham Lincoln. All right. Yeah. Well, there you go.
I could have been looking at a portrait of Abraham Lincoln all this time and thinking that it was just a portrait of Abraham Lincoln.
Greg went to Hamburger U and had to be incredibly literal. There you go.
There you go. All right. So, Mike, the work here, amazing stuff. There's the elephant again. Just so you know.
The elephant in the back again.
Yeah, that's it. He had the elephants. So Dali was incredibly influential, and I think you'll see some of Dali's influences in the next pieces of work. But I do want to touch on another famous artist and writer, Franz Kafka.
Oh, yes.
Have you read any Kafka, Mike?
I have read the Metamorphosis, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Okay, talk to me about what the Metamorphosis is and why is it important in the surrealistic movement?
The Metamorphosis is a fantastic book about a man, I forget his name, I think it's Gregor, who wakes up in the body of what everyone assumes or everyone believes is a cockroach, but it's more like a beetle. But yeah, he wakes up and he's in this beetle body in his house, and that's where he lives, and he has to deal with it. That's really all there is to it. It's fantastic.
It's weird, and it just gets weirder as you go. His second most famous piece of work is In the Penal Colony, which is an imprisonment story. I believe they're just imprisoned with no explanation, and it just keeps getting stranger and stranger. Now, it had a little bit of politics to it. So I think, we read these on the surface as stories, but there was also veiled politics for it. Interestingly enough, Mike, gonna also say, also in Europe, I was able to travel to the Franz Kafka Museum, which was a three-dimensional installation because Kafka also did physical arts. So not only was he a brilliant writer for his time, he also made artwork.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Kafka was incredibly influential. I read the Metamorphosis. No matter how many times you read it, it never gets unweird.
It is fantastic. And then I don't want to give anything away. I guess I could spoil or
Mike,
maybe
it's 150 years
when
old.
when I think his sister or somebody throws the apple at him and it gets stuck in like his hard shell and it just starts to rot. And that's eventually what ends up killing. It's who thinks of this stuff? It's amazing.
The surrealists think of this stuff.
Apparently they do.
They do. So here we are. Now we're getting into surreal comic books. By the way, I did that in Photoshop.
Nice.
Here, hold on. I'm looking for some. You know, for a non-graphic designer, Mike, I go in there, I try to do my best for our viewers. I want them to know that I have nothing but love for them. And I had to learn how to do that thing in Photoshop.
Well, you did a pretty good job.
Does it look surreal?
It does look slightly surreal. You should have put like some weird chipmunks or elephants coming out of the letters. Then it would have been really surreal.
That would have been really surreal. Okay, we're going to take you through a tour of some surreal comics. I'm sure I've missed hundreds, and I hope people give us some recommendations for other surreal comics that we should be checking out. Mike, in the end, there will be some surreal comics that I believe will challenge your understanding of surreal comics, and you may challenge me. What do you think of that?
I think that sounds like a good plan. And Andrew says, if you didn't nap so much, you could get a third job as a graphic designer.
That's the problem with getting enough sleep, Mike. All right, so we're leading off. By the way, I grabbed this graphic and actually used the colors from this to build that graphic. But you know, the surreal character probably that most of us will recognize and relate to is this guy. You want to talk about this guy, Mike?
That is Dr. Strange. He is the of course, now I can't think of what he is.
Master of Mystic Arts.
Master of Mystic Arts. I was going to say Master of Magnetism, but I knew that wasn't.
That's Magneto.
Yeah. So yeah, he does just all crazy spells, and he works with his hands because he was a surgeon. So he knows how to do all these crazy spells and taps into the weirdest dimensions and craziest things you can imagine.
Yeah, and that's where Steve Ditko took us. This went genuinely into the surrealistic territory. Traveling into other dimensions was never so fun as when Steve Ditko had Dr. Strange literally traipsing through strange dimensions that look like the notebook of the best artist in your school, right? It was, you'd be like, hey, Joey, show me your artwork. He's like, oh, look at this. I've moved Dr. Strange into this strange area. And like, this came out in the 60s during a trippy time. And it expanded your thought process about the universe, the world, multiverses. And what Ditko was doing at the time was firmly surreal. What do you think?
Yes, I think it looks pretty good. Is that Eternity he's talking to?
He is talking to Eternity, who is wearing a cloak of planets and universes, and Dr. Strange seems nonplussed by it.
Yeah, he's like, hey, this guy looks sort of familiar, so I'll talk.
You're pretty tall,
yeah.
And I could never truly get into Dr. Strange.
Well, why not?
Because of this. Like, it was just too out there for me. As a kid growing up, I was like, yeah, Captain America punch Nazis, Spidey fight Craven,
But,
and
Dr. Strange talking to Eternity didn't do it for you.
Right. It was really esoteric. And the surrealism of this book was obviously not aimed toward the child reader, which I was. As a little kid, I did not understand this. I don't think I understand it now as an adult either, I'll be honest with you. But I think what Steve Ditko was going for was something that was on, let's call it an existential plane, where he was talking about theories and philosophies and trying to express them visually for an audience that was probably out of their target audience. This was at a time when Stan Lee started to travel to college campuses, because college students started reading these comics, maybe under the influence of some substances. Reading
Perhaps.
this, it started to make sense.
Because when you're on the substances, a lot of things make sense.
Now, I think as a surrealistic text, it's really all there. It challenges you as a reader. It is visually anchored with enough realism, as we talked about. It has to have enough realism for this surrealism to actually work. Like if the art was junky, this wouldn't work. But because the art is so clean and the lines are so sharp, and even these objects in the dimensions had shadings and shadows, and there was, foreground and background and midground, it anchored it enough in reality to make it surrealistic.
Interesting.
But for surrealism to work, it can't just be sloppy artwork.
Yes, it has to actually make a little bit of sense. It can be crazy, but it's just got to have that slight grounded ability.
Right. Even when we were talking about Kafka, right? Kafka was an everyman. He was a guy that was in his bedroom. They're asking him to come out, and he's slowly converting, metamorphosizing into whatever it is, a beetle or a bug. But it's slow, and he anchors it. He has to go to work, right? He's late for work. That's the premise of the story. And then his boss comes to the house and is like, "You must come to work,"
He's like, "I'm a cockroach.
Cockroach, I can't come to work." So, for Doctor Strange to work, it needed to be rooted in reality, which is what made the inclusion of this in the MCU such a surprise for me. And that they pulled it off in the way that they did was equally as surprising. I was absolutely blown away by how well they pulled off Doctor Strange, particularly in the first movie. They anchored and rooted the character in reality, and then they slowly unfolded the surrealistic nature of his new life. What are your thoughts, Mike?
I thought that was impressive what they did. And when they put him in the mirror universe, and everything is weird and wacky, and you can run up buildings, and the buildings are floating. It was quite impressive.
It was quite impressive, and it was also probably a balancing act that could have gone very, very wrong.
Yeah.
You think about even when he was in other dimensions fighting Dormammu, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could have really gone off the rails. But the reason they made it work was they continued to anchor it in reality. This anchor, what you see here, Mike, is the anchor to reality for surrealism to work. If it was just this weird, sloppy universe, you'd be like, I don't like what's going on. The reason it works is because right here you can see like the street curves and it's like almost like an MC Escher painting where you're looking into this and your mind is trying to make sense of it and it can't.
Yeah.
Right.
It's still things that like it's the buildings and the streets and the cars.
Exactly.
That's what you can lock onto. Even though it's crazy, it's like, oh, it's still kind of there.
Right. And you can see, if you note, we have foreground, midground, background, extreme background, using the same principles that we use in comic book storytelling. It gave this world depth. It didn't just make it very flat. And in order for surrealism to work, it needs to be rounded out by that very solid piece of reality so that the weirdness feels like it's happening in the real world.
Mm-hmm. It's like a dream. That's exactly what surrealism is. It's taking your dreams and making them reality. Oh, and that ending with the spinning top. I didn't know if he was awake. Wrong movie. So that's Inception. Come on, Glenn.
But another surrealistic. Okay, let's jump on to the next one, Mike. Have you ever heard of a piece of literature called 6 Characters in Search of an Author?
I have never heard of this.
All right. So I don't remember when it came out. I think 1950s, maybe 1960s. I might be wrong. Somebody can Wikipedia that real quick. But basically, the 6 actors have shown up for a stage play, and the author has not yet shown up to write their parts. And they are now on stage, and they must figure out what their purpose is, what roles they play, and then what the story is all about. And it's a very meta commentary. Of course, written as a play, it was also performed as a play. And it's a very famous play that plays with the concept of stage direction, writing, acting. There's many, many layers to it. I have found it very difficult to read because it is so strange.
Yeah.
That it's hard to anchor onto something.
Well, it would be. I mean, first of all, if they showed up to be in this play, wouldn't the play have already been written that they would have auditioned for to be in it?
They know that they have a part. They don't know why they're there. This one is surrealistic because as the reader, and perhaps as a person in the audience, you're trying to figure out, okay, well, when will they figure this out? When will the author get there? Will the author ever get there? And they are actually acting out a meta theater experience in trying to figure out their characters.
It's already making my mind feel.
Would you go see this?
I might go see it. It sounds weird enough that it's something I would go and see, because I think like you, I'd probably watch it and be like, I don't understand what's happening here.
Yeah, I'd be like, can I eat Twizzlers?
If I could have a plate of nachos with me while I'm watching.
Yeah, can I watch it? Okay. I read the original text. I found it very difficult to get through, partially because, it is a translated text. I believe the original must have been in Italian, I think. You can see here it says an opera in 3 acts. I would watch it just to get through it and see. Based off of this,
Andrew would watch it if his wife forced him.
Get Andrew's wife's phone number. We'll see. We'll see about that.
Andrew will be watching it. We want a review when you finally watch it, Andrew.
Yeah. So Milo Manara, also an Italian comic book creator, is doing a series. Here, let me show you the series, which was published a couple of years ago, called The African Adventures of Joseeppi Bergman. This was part 1. Now, I read this when I was a wee child, and one of the reasons for it was because he drew the women with the boobies.
Yes.
And
reasons.
Yeah. And I mean, Manara is famous for his drawing of women, but he's a tremendous storyteller. And I have all the books, and you will see actually some of these are actually taken from my own collection. Here we go. This is why we do this. Let's see if I can. So it's part of a series of books of surrealistic stories starring this character, Joseeppi Bergman. And I'm going to show you some of the interiors. But, they were all vaguely adult. Not vaguely. Like, they were all definitely adult. Not vaguely. They were definitively adult.
They were adult.
Yeah, they were adult. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it as a kid. It was awesome. But he does a riff on the author's story. But this one, it says an author in search of 6 characters versus 6 characters in search of an author.
Oh, look at that Milo. He's smart like that.
Yeah. Metal Hurlant much. You betcha, my friend. I actually discovered this in Heavy Metal magazine, not Metal Hurlant. Metal Hurlant was the precursor to Heavy Metal, but it was printed in I don't know what language, but it was in Europe. But this story follows these characters who are trying to figure out their part in a story. There's an envelope with some details about the characters, and different people walk on and off stage randomly. They talk. They're trying to figure out who they are, what they're supposed to do. You have panels with long pauses as they try to figure out the narrative. And it's absolutely bizarre and compelling. I personally love this. I bought all the books. Only this book I feel like is worth reading. Convincing the lead actress with this, which is, come on, miss, don't say no. We're already so far into the story that we can't go back now. It builds its own internal logic, and then it just goes into stranger and stranger territory. As a reader, You're constantly off balance. And what you have to accept is that really almost none of this is going to make sense. But because, once again, he anchors it with realistic looking characters, again, I'll zoom in on here, to realistic looking environments, the weirdness of it seems like it could be 6 people trying to find the author to their story and figure out what they're supposed to be doing.
Is it like the author to their story? Do they know they're comic characters, or are they supposed to be real life people looking for the author to their play or something?
All of the above.
Oh, okay.
They are there. There is a mission. They don't know what the mission is. There are people trying to kill them. There are people who later on it gets very, very R-rated and then hard R-rated with.
So that's why you like
that's Milo Manara, you know. That's why when you buy these as a kid, you hide them under the other books that you have.
Of course.
Yeah, but this is, in my mind, probably within the top 10 of surrealistic stories that if you are interested in exploring surrealism, you really should check this out. But again, be forewarned, it is a hard R. There's a lot of adult situations in it. What do you think, Mike? Is this something that you would be interested in reading?
It sounds interesting to start off with, but I think once it went off the rails, like really, really off the rails, I'd just give up and say it's not interesting, fun anymore.
Yeah, it does go off the rails to the point where you're almost flipping through, unsure of what's going on. Is the artist just drawing things randomly and we're going to build a story around that? I think that's kind of what happens. Anyway, it is part of a much larger series of the books that I showed you here. There are recurring characters. There are recurring themes of some very adult situations. There are things that don't age terribly well from when they first came out in the 70s.
But there is a story to it. Like it finishes up, like it ties everything together, or does it just kind of let everything happen?
It's just stuff happening.
Okay. So yeah, see, I wouldn't be interested in it. Then.
It's just stuff happening with great art. To see the stars, probably if you went to art school, Mike, or studied art in any way, this one would probably be the most interesting. Milo Manara takes a surrealistic trip through famous works of art, paintings, sculptures, statues, you name it. He takes you through it and weaves them together with a weird narrative. It is truly surreal. If that's your sort of thing, and as you can tell, I own all of them.
It's your sort of thing?
It's my sort of thing. Yeah.
I see how it says adults only in the corner up there.
I'm an adult.
Not when you bought it, you weren't.
No. When I bought this was scandalous. This was like the scrambled channel of HBO when we were kids.
Yep.
All right. So Milo Manara, would you have picked any of these up just based on it? Would you read it if I loaned it to you?
Maybe, but if I was a kid, I would have definitely picked it up just for the covers, but I probably wouldn't have gotten it. So
all right, that's fair. And not your favorite. They were in black and white.
Yeah, I know.
And you always have a problem with black and white. All right, ready for the next one. Here we go. Mike, who's Jim Henson?
Jim Henson, he's the Muppets guy. Sesame Street. One of the most brilliant creators in our generation.
So he is indeed one of the most brilliant and prolific creators, and most famous for the Muppets, but was also a screenwriter. And Jim Henson liked surrealistic storytelling, despite the fact that he made himself famous creating physical puppets. All the puppets also had some sort of surrealistic.
Yeah.
Did he do Fraggle Rock?
Yeah.
Did he?
Yep. We got two of them. We got Gobo and Wembley in the picture there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Which one's Fraggle Rock?
The one on the bottom left.
Oh, that's Fraggle Rock?
That's Gobo. And then that one where your little hand is right there, that's Wembley. No, one down. That's Animal. That's Wembley.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Henson had, after his passing, somebody had discovered that he and his partner, Jerry Jewell, who is also co-credited with creating Sesame Street, had a completed film manuscript sitting in a top drawer that nobody knew about.
Huh.
It was completely forgotten, and they shopped it around, and Archaea Publishing assigned Ramon Perez, famous comic book artist, to interpret Tale of Sand.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it either. I have to tell you, Mike, it is stunningly brilliant and meta-aware to the point. By the way, you can see my little you can see my little binder clips here as I was trying to pin down the top of the book so that the pages didn't flip. Literally within the story, you have a bar fight with all different sorts of football players and samurai and a bar fight, and it's just crazy. Right here in the background, there are parts where you can actually see the physical script where Jim Henson scribbled on the script, stitched into the back of the artwork.
Huh. Interesting.
It is exceedingly surreal. Are you with me still? Are you daydreaming there?
No, I'm looking at some Russ is giving us crap for this. I mean, you guys have not heard of Fraggle Rock. I know of Fraggle Rock, Russ. I've watched.
No. This one. This one. The
this is that what he's talking about?
Yeah, this one. The
Eisner. Okay, well, I have
did
never
Russ
heard
win
of
any
this.
Eisners. Ask Russ if he run any.
Exactly. Yes. You come and watch this show for us, Russ.
Yeah, Russ.
Knowledge.
Yeah. This is Russ. This is penance for all the time I've been out to California, and you've made yourself unavailable. This is your punishment. Anyway, Mike, it's all over the place. It is an amazing story, and basically, this guy Mac, who you see many, many times here, he is our hero. Mac is trying to get from one end of the desert to the other end of the desert, and he is given a 10-minute head start. But they don't tell him what the 10-minute head start is for. As it turns out, he is being pursued, and they will kill him.
Oh, okay.
And all he has to do is get from one end of the desert to the other, and they give him a map. And he says, if you follow the map, you should be okay. And he says, follow the map to where? And then he explains where he has to go. And he says, over here. And he says, you have to get to it. And he says, now we're here. And if you can get to Eagle Mountain, you'll be safe. It's literally a mountain in the shape of an eagle. Okay. And then the prospector who's showing him in the map gives him one last piece of advice, which is
don't trust the map.
Don't trust the map.
All right. So follow the map to get there, but don't trust the map.
Don't trust the map. It is a beautiful and compelling story that stands as perhaps one of, I'm going to just show you a few more pages, one of my favorite surrealistic stories. From beginning to end, it's just wonderful. You know, crosses the street, stops for a ride, and a lion steps out of the car. Now, they had written this to be filmed, and it was considered unfilmable.
Well, maybe back then. Today it would be easily filmable.
Now anything's filmable.
Yeah.
But now, just as a point of reference, what do you think of this? Would you check this out?
This I would check out because I'm a huge fan of pretty much everything Jim Henson does. So I would watch this and I would also read it.
Yeah. So this is a wonderful book, Tale of Sand, highly recommended. It's not common. You don't see it very often, but if you do see it, pick it up. It's just super fun.
Interesting. Well, next time I'm home, I will borrow it from you.
Yes, you will. We're going to get into some others. I did want to acknowledge, we did talk a little bit about Kafka. So Peter Cooper did 14 stories called Kafkaesque. where he adapted into comics some of the stories. Strangely enough, did not include the Metamorphosis.
No, that one's too famous. They didn't want to, you know.
I'd like to see it visually. I'm not a I don't fully understand Peter Cooper's art. I know that he's a very famous artist. Doesn't speak to me, but I do respect the integrity of the work he puts out. What he does, he is very good at.
Okay, never heard of him.
Yeah. I mean, is this your type of art? This isn't my type of art.
I mean, it's fine if it fit the story. I think it would be okay.
Yeah, it fits the story. And then there is this one. Giraffes on Horseback Salad, starring the Marx Brothers in a screenplay written by Salvador Dali.
I bet that one is really out there.
Really out there. I found it to be unreadable.
Not surprising.
It's just every which way. I couldn't tell what was going on, and it was strange and oblique and off the rails for all the wrong reasons. I didn't like it. Your mileage may vary, Mike.
I would probably guess I would not like it.
Yeah. So it's the strangest movie never made. It is what it is. This is another not safe for work. I've always loved this cover. Look, they even mentioned Wizard magazine from our Wizard days, but like just the image of the guy with the blood exploding and the shape and the outline. Have you ever read Arsenic Lullaby, Mike?
I have never even heard of Arsenic Lullaby.
It is absolutely disturbing. There is no part of this that I can describe and have us not get a strike on our channel. There's just nothing. And if you see anybody pull anything up in the comments, don't even pull it up. It is absolutely positively not safe for work. And there should be a trigger warning on every issue.
Oh, okay. Well,
but if you find surrealistic and gruesome horror humor entertaining, I think you'd like this, Mike.
Yes, maybe if I liked gruesome horror. No,
the cover wins, though. You got to admit that's a winning cover.
It is a good cover. So this is an example of when you need a good editor to reel you in. Yeah, it depends on what you're going for. I mean, if you are going for that wacky surreal stuff, the editor might go, "This is the best thing I've ever read."
I agree, though. A good editor can help you know when you're on the rails and when you're off the rails, when you've gone too far off the rails. Like this was too far off the rails. It was like random drawings and random dialogue. At least with, the story here, Tale of Sand, there was some narrative stitching it together. Same thing with this. There's always a narrative stitching it together. But we go into Giraffes on Horseback Salad. It was almost like they shook words up in a bag, threw them down, and was like, okay, draw that.
But that's what surrealism is. It just doesn't make sense. It's like walking into your dreams. They don't make sense. Even as you're in them, you're like, what is happening? But that's what the surrealism is.
True. All my dreams make sense, Mike. It's my naps that don't make any sense. All right. So would you check out Arsenic Lullaby?
No, that seems a little too much for me.
A little much for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be a little
very delicate.
Yeah, I don't think your wife would appreciate it around the house either.
No.
Okay, Doom Patrol. Mike, have you ever watched the Doom Patrol television show?
I have absolutely watched the Doom Patrol television show, and I thought it was great.
Yeah, I tried to watch it. I tried to get through season 1. I could not get through season 1. Does it get better with season 2?
Season 1 was by far the best. It doesn't get worse in season 2, but it's kind of like the story for me. I was like, I don't really care, but it was still good and a little out there, and the characters were still fun to watch.
So yeah, the Doom Patrol was a standard, if a little bit strange, concept out of the 1960s. When Grant Morrison was a young writer, initiated the story Crawling from the Wreckage. where he began to incorporate surrealistic concepts into the narrative. This was the first story crawling from the records. This was the first arc. It progressively gets weirder and more surrealistic with the painting that ate Paris. As you can see, the characters are starting to get stranger and more even like, look at this. It's like literally a Picasso painting. It just gets stranger and stranger and stranger. I would say that Crawling from the Wreckage works extremely well and anchors the television show effectively. The painting that ate Paris, I feel like, goes so far into surrealism that it tested me as a reader. Not in a good way. It tested my patience.
That doesn't seem like something that I would read, but yeah, like I said, the first series on TV was very good.
Yeah. So some of the more significant surrealistic things that came out of this, I'm not sure if it's in the TV show. There was a character called Danny the Street. Is Danny the Street in the TV show?
Danny the Street is in the TV show. Yes, he is.
So what is Danny the Street in the TV show?
He's essentially an entire town. It's like a sentient town.
That can appear anywhere, right? Transport anywhere?
Yep. Go anywhere it needs to.
As surrealism goes, I kind of think this is brilliant. You know, it is visually stimulating. It challenges your thinking as a reader. And honestly, I'm jealous that I never thought of anything this amazing.
If you thought of this, you'd be like, that's too far gone and it'll never work.
I probably would have self-censored myself. Grant Morrison, many props for getting it published. Great stuff. Also, the Scissor Men. The Scissor Men cut things out of existence quite literally with their scissors. You can see here just chopping pieces apart in the strangest way. He's not hurting people. They're not hurting people, but they are cutting things.
It looks like it hurts.
Yeah. They speak in rhymes and in poetry or haiku or whatever. I don't know what any of this dialogue means.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's any sort of English, I know.
Yeah, so it just gets stranger and stranger. Not a fan of the Scissormen. This is when I think they sort of go a little too far. But once again, credit to Grant Morrison, and I think it was Richard Case who did this. You can see the backgrounds, the foregrounds, the primary characters. Even these characters have weight in the world, and even drawn here, you know, you see the shadow dropped beneath the doctor who's been scissored out. That's what makes the surrealism work. That's what takes it from being just a badly drawn comic into something that is truly surrealistic that you can believe. I mean, just look at this the back of the doctor here. It's just so weird, but it works because they maintain the rules of the world.
It's very strange.
Very strange. Okay, we're gonna go one more. This is about the painting that ate Paris. This is directly from Fandom. I'm gonna take a sip of water. You want to read this here, Mike, for our readers?
Sure. The painting that ate Paris was a mysterious, untitled painting with many levels that had the ability to absorb anyone or anything near it when activated by a contradiction or absurdity. Huh.
So I'm not 100% sure what the story was about. I read it more than once, and then I read it recently. I was like, I'm going to come back to this because I'm older and wiser.
And you still didn't get it.
I still didn't get it. So credit to anybody who does get it. It's just too smart for me.
It's basically, if you stand in front of the painting, you get sucked into it.
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know. I just don't know. Okay. If you want to continue your journey, here are a couple of quick hits. Omega the Unknown is an unnamed superhero character that comes from a kid's imagination with powers and almost no explanation. Marvel ran this. Steve Gerber wrote it. It was in the 1970s. It ran 10 issues. I defy you to tell me what it's about. It is a surrealistic thing. I think it's wonderful that Marvel took a chance on it. Steve Gerber, best known for creating Howard the Duck.
Oh, wow.
and Man-Thing. Also, stuff that's all off kilter. We're going to do an episode on Steve Gerber soon, but Omega the Unknown, I've always saved it. Every once in a while, I go back and read it. I still never understand it.
That seems like something that I might pick up to read, as long as it's only 10 issues.
It's only 10 issues. I'll loan you the trade paperback.
All right. Sounds good.
Every once in a while, they would move into surrealism and absurdism. This just feels like a silly concept, but it is the return of the living eraser.
He's like the Scissormen.
Yeah, it's like the Scissormen, and probably preceded the Scissormen by a good decade or more. But like, as you can see, they're getting erased. Their bodies haven't changed, but the living eraser is just erasing pieces of them. This is surrealism in a Marvel comic, which I think is pretty awesome.
It's interesting. I may have picked that up as a kid just to see what it was about, but it looks weird.
It's kind of a cult classic. Like, there's a lot of people who will just collect books like this, and the living eraser is a classic, like, weird throwaway character who they didn't reboot like they did with Paste Pot Pete, making him the Trapster, making him a real villain. They just kept the living eraser as a living eraser. So next up, Shade the Changing Man.
Yes.
Remember this?
I think the first issue of Shade with not that cover. I think that's probably the reboot.
This was the reboot. So the original was from Steve Ditko, who had a character called Shade who would use the M-Vest, the meta vest, who would alter reality. Peter Milligan and Chris Bichello took it to the next level of weirdness and surrealism into this dreamlike world that it ran a really long time. Like, I don't know, maybe 50 issues. I read it. It is at the same time compelling and fascinating as it is completely and utterly confusing.
Yeah, the art in the first run was always seemed a little off to me. It was cool because he would like stretch his, he had like the M vest would give him the powers to like expand his fist so he could punch somebody from really far away and make it more powerful. It was weird stories. But this, even from the covers, would have been a little too much for me.
Yeah, you've got JFK here in the body of the Sphinx, right? Here's JFK bleeding from the head, but he's the body of the Sphinx. You've got Shade, who's bursts of colors, faces. It was really out there. It's occasionally it lands and occasionally it doesn't. If you have the tolerance to sit down and read some 50-odd issues on a hit or miss, and you like surrealism, Shade the Changing Man, and then I think they had Shade the Changing Woman as a reboot a couple years ago. If you like this sort of thing, this is that sort of thing.
Did it have actual stories, or was it always just?
I have no idea. I really have no idea.
So it's just weird.
He was when we were reading this series, he was traveling across the United States in a car, and I don't know why.
Did he ever get to his destination?
I don't know. In fact, I almost think we should have a challenge where we go back and read some of these things that we either remembered or can't remember why we read them. This is one that I will challenge you that Calvin and Hobbes is actually a surrealistic storytelling. Calvin is a real boy, and his best friend is a stuffed tiger who is also his best friend, who is only a tiger when no parents or adults are around. Adding to it, Calvin has wonderful flights of fancy as Spaceman Spiff, which he goes into surrealistic adventures and eventually ties it back to the real world. And I would argue that we didn't know it as kids, but Calvin and Hobbes was an experimentation in surrealism.
It is, but it keeps it grounded enough that it still makes sense.
Right. Well, his body is 90% water. He's becoming liquid. His hope is to get himself to an ice box. He's turned into a puddle. I don't think I'm going to make it. There's a gas station up ahead. Why didn't I tell you to drink so much before we left? I think Calvin and Hobbes, as I look back on it, had a lot of surrealism in it. What do you think, Mike?
It did. I think I agree with you, but like I said, it's still grounded enough that it wasn't like Shade the Changing Man where it didn't make any sense. His adventures were the adventures of a little kid and his tiger. And
With a
that's
good imagination, right?
Yeah, they can just be as crazy as they wanted, but they still made sense.
It was primarily anchored in the real world, him going to school, whatnot, fighting dinosaurs, whatever. I think it was the Sunday strips.
Yes.
Where he went and became, to the next level. It was something about the color. I don't know if I have one more. Yeah, there you go. A lot of dinosaurs. So, I mean, I absolutely think that if we went back and did another analysis, we could make the argument that at times this was surrealism.
Yes, we could.
How much did you love Calvin and Hobbes?
Calvin and Hobbes was probably my favorite Sunday comic.
Your favorite Sunday comic?
Yes. And even over Peanuts.
Even over Peanuts. Well, Mike, it's funny that you mentioned Peanuts. Oh, not that. For example, I'm home from school, Hobbes, tiger attack, attacking him in the real world, reacting in the real world. But as soon as mom comes by, he's a stuffed animal again.
Yep. It's like being a kid again.
And then mom walks away, he's a tiger.
Because she always wanted another tiger, not you.
That's right. But speaking of Peanuts, I would argue that there was quite a lot of surrealism, but mostly around the side characters of Snoopy and Woodstock. Snoopy was the flying ace who would battle the Red Baron. There would be long sequences in the comic strips, again, often on the Sunday strips, but in the animated series as well, well animated. Snoopy had the best imagination of anybody. He was a regular dog to Charlie Brown, but he also played baseball on the team.
Yep.
As an outfielder, and he could
also play the bass too.
He could play the bass. He played music, and certainly, last but not least, he was a writer.
That's true. Yes, the Dark and Stormy Night. Yep.
Right, and even in this surrealistic moment where the kids just pretty much accept, there he is writing again.
He's Snoopy.
He's Snoopy. Right? Right over here, he's writing. Oh, there he is. He's writing again. And over here, he always started his story the same way.
Uh-huh.
It was a dark and stormy night. Novel has a very exciting beginning. Good luck with the second sentence.
Sometimes all you need is that one good sentence.
Right. So once again, Mike, now that we look back, is Peanuts in some way surrealism?
Partially.
Okay, talk to me.
Well, I mean, like you said, it does only center around Snoopy, and it's only on occasion. It's not like every episode or every strip something wacky happened. It was only now and then, and it was only involving Snoopy. So yes, it could be considered somewhat surreal, but again, grounded in reality, so not fully surreal.
You mean grounded in reality that these kids come up and there's a dog with a typewriter on a dog house, and they're talking and they're reading what he wrote?
Well, you have dogs. You don't do that?
No, I don't. This literally is surrealism bleeding into the real world. Like he literally normalized the surrealistic moment. What started off as Snoopy writing the worst novel in the world becomes normalized as the other characters recognize it.
It's a world exclusively for children. Exactly.
It is, but you read it now and you're struck by the depth of this. Am I right?
I would have never considered it surreal until this show.
So, Mike, how would you characterize Peanuts? I asked AI this.
Oh, well, this is another point. Any adult exists as incomprehensible noises. That's true.
Wah, 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 yep. Wah, wah, wah. I asked AI, and Mike, you are the AI king at this
I'm loving
point.
this AI thing. Yeah.
I asked AI, I said, does Peanuts have elements of surrealism? And AI said, yeah, I think it does. And then I asked, what genre would you categorize it as? And it said it would categorize it as existentialism, constantly questioning the meaning of life through the eyes and mouths of children. They question the meaning of life. Everything from the meaning of the little redheaded girl to the kite getting caught in the tree to Charlie Brown never being able to kick the football.
Well, it's true.
Existentialism.
That's why AI is smarter than us.
It is way smarter than us. Although I will tell you, I was somewhat disappointed. AI made quite a few mistakes in helping me with my research.
Oh, what did it do? Just didn't give you the right info?
It gave me the wrong information. It was like, oh, yeah, the Doom Patrol is written by Neil Gaiman.
Oh.
I'm like, Neil Gaiman didn't write Doom Patrol. And it was like, oh, I'm very sorry. When Grant Morrison wrote Sandman, and I went, what?
Yeah, sometimes it hits a glitch and it just does a spiral into like, everything being wrong.
It flip-flopped Grant Morrison and Neil Gaiman. The names aren't even close.
But it apologizes every time it gets it wrong, and you point it out.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for that.
Anyway, so Mike, what'd you think of our episode on surrealism? Did you enjoy looking into surrealism?
I did enjoy, and I learned a lot about Peanuts and Calvin and Hobbes being surreal comics.
All right. What did everybody else think? Were they given the comments? Were they enjoying the show, or?
It seemed that they were, although Andrew Campbell says AI is bad.
That's what Andrew got out of this show.
And Victor said it was a great show. So apparently Victor does
like Victor. Thanks, Victor. Thanks, Victor. All right, Mike, we're gonna put on our outro funk music in a second. That's true. What did Redhead say?
It pulled. That's because AI pulls information from everywhere, whether it's true from the source or not. That's true.
Come back next week. We have some guests that are coming up. We welcome your topics and your ideas. We listen to what you say. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We are nice guys. We're pretty nice guys.
Well, that's good, Glenn. Don't ever put the fork in the outlet unless the power's turned off. Then you can do it.
That's right. And if you want to know more, you need to go to MikeFasolo.com to learn more about our 3-time Emmy Award-winning TV writer. Mike, where can they find this website?
They can find that at MikeFasolo.com. Very simple to remember.
Very simple to remember. And it's also, remember, smash that like button. And also there's a little reminder thing there, so click that. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We will see you again next week, 8 p.m. Tuesday. Thanks, everyone. Good night, and keep making comics.